If you or someone you love selects all the options in processing with FTK so they won't miss anything, then this episode's for you. Episode 4 of FTK Feature Focus. Welcome back to FTK Feature Focus. This is episode 4. I am Justin Tolman. I'm the director of training at Access Data, which is an Xterra company. It's a new name, but the same great software. And today what we're going to be talking about is the processing options related to FTK. And specifically what we're going to talk about is how to optimize the selections that you make in processing so you get everything that you need, but don't spend extra time waiting. This gets you into your case faster, which means you can get through your cases quicker and more efficiently. Shown on the screen is a very generalized workflow for what the analysis stage within a forensic investigation might be. Of course, within these different diamonds here are going to be nuance and policies and procedures and various things that you're going to go for. But of course, we're going to start with this basic outline. So the first thing that we would do coming out of preservation into the analysis phase of our investigation is we need to determine if there's any evidence. And this is where we're going to focus, okay? Because this is the first step of our investigation where we need to determine what we need to do. So what we want to be able to do is to process our case in the most efficient way possible so that we can answer this question as quickly as possible, okay? So is there any evidence? Okay. To illustrate this point, I have a small image. If you've taken Access Data training before or have been around in the forensic community, it's the man-tooth image. It's been around forever, but it's perfect for these little examples. It has 1,899 actual files within the image file itself. So if I were to jump in and I were to check all the processing options in FTK and run it against these 1,899 files, it's going to take just over 30 minutes, okay? And you can see that we've generated from these 1,899 files, we've generated 303,000 files. Not all of those are going to be relevant to your investigation. Let's say that all we care about is graphics and video files. Okay, it's a case where we're looking for those types of evidence items. You don't need to check everything. Not everything is going to be, at least right off the bat, important to that type of investigation. So to illustrate this point, if I were to only choose processing options that are related to graphic files. So I want to generate thumbnails for my graphics. I want to process the EXIF data associated with those. I want to create my index library so I can do some searching. And we'll talk more about that here in a little bit. And then for videos, I want to process video thumbnails, okay? So that I don't have to actually scrub through them. I can just take a look at them and see chunks through the video. Well, by reducing it down to just those handful of processing options, I can cut down the amount of files generated. Notice we're just over 2,000 now. Okay, again, small image, and it only took us about 30 seconds to process. Now, obviously, this is a very small image. The man-tooth image is tiny, but you can see how the time differs between targeting what you need, just what you need, and processing everything and generating files that you probably don't even care to look at, especially right off the bat when you're determining, do I have any evidence? So we have this kind of scale where the more things you select in processing, the higher up you're going to go in the amount of time spent. And that's a delay before you can get into your case. All right, so we've covered kind of the general idea. We're looking for our evidence, time versus the number of artifacts parsed. Okay, great. Let's take a look at FTK and how we can manage our processing options. So first on the left here is the new case options window or the create case window. And within the processing profiles here, you have our quick buttons, our easy buttons, the processing profile selection. The one I'll mention that can be used at any time without modification is field mode. Field mode turns all the processing options off and allows you to get in very quickly. Now you don't have any help other than just the general structure of the disk. It's not going to really process much there, but you can at least do a quick look at what you have. The other processing options are just selections made from the evidence processing window, also displayed here, based on what Access Data thinks is a good roundabout thing for those disciplines. Remember, they're trying to configure things to do the most good for the most people. It may not be exactly what you need, so we can customize it. What type of evidence are you looking for initially to determine whether you have evidence? If it's graphic files, if it's documents. So if it's documents, then we can come into our expand compound file options. We can clear all the ones we don't care about, and we can come down into Microsoft Office, OLE, and OPC documents. Maybe the documents will be related to email, so we'll grab MSG and PST as well, and we can target just where it is and only process those things. Okay, if we were looking at graphic files right off the bat, again, we could choose our EXIF. If we're looking for documents, we don't necessarily need event logs expanded out yet, or SQLite databases, or things like that. First, we want to be able to look at the Microsoft Office documents, determine if the keywords are there that we want, if the documents are there that we want, etc. Once we've determined that we have evidence, moving to the next step, how did that evidence get there? Now we can take a look at, okay, let's take a look at the event logs and the jump lists and the MRUs and all that sort of information and build up the foundation that supports those files. One thing that can save you a lot of time when you're going through your processing is turning off hashing. And I know that sounds a little weird because in forensics, we're very hash happy. We love to hash all the things. Now, if you're going to use known file filter or you want to flag duplicate files, then absolutely turn on the appropriate hashes and run that. If your investigation is going to make use of them, then perfect. But if you're not using known file filter and you're not going to flag duplicate files, then why are we going to run MD5 and SHA-1 hashes? We can turn that off and save that and run only the hash algorithms on the items that we're going to send out for our report. At that point, it makes sense to hash just those few files. So what we want to do is, like that, analyze what is our objective here. Are we using known file filter, duplicate files? No, then we can probably turn off our MD5 and SHA-1 until we're ready for reporting. Are we looking at graphic files primarily? In our example kind of before, where we're talking about document files, if I'm looking at documents, PDFs, Words, spreadsheet, QuickBooks, whatever else is out there, right? Do I need to generate thumbnails for my graphics right off the bat? Probably not. FTK will generate graphics as you look at them automatically anyways once you get into the case. Let's not spend that time up front generating thumbnails for something that you're probably not going to look at yet. The last one I want to talk about here specifically in choosing processing options and getting them optimized for your case is the index search function. So doing the search text index will take time to process, especially if you have a larger image or a larger set of evidence that you're putting in. However, it can be super useful in searching for all types of files. So it can be well worth the time. Specifically with Microsoft documents and graphics, FTK 7.4 has added a lot of new column sets to those two file types. If you're going to be digging through Microsoft documents, all the Office documents, or graphics, we've added those columns, and now you can use filtering rather than the index search to narrow in on, say, the author, the last save by, the save time. In the EXIF data, the make, model, GPS coordinates, all that sort of stuff is now displayed in columns, which means you can use the filter. So if that's the information you're looking for, you can cut further time off of your processing by using those filters. I'm making this video because one of the things that I hear about FTK a lot is that it's too slow. It takes too long to get into your case. But then when I'm running trainings and I'm talking with people at various places, I find that they're choosing a lot of processing options that they either won't use, don't need, or in some cases are literally selecting them all. And this generates a lot of extra time. And yeah, at that point, FTK will take longer to. However, if you take your time and create processing profiles for the type of evidence that you're looking for, this is simply not the case. FTK will be able to process that data accurately and quickly, showing you only what you need to know at the beginning of your investigation to determine whether or not you have any evidence and how to proceed from there. Lastly, you don't have to reconfigure these every time if you don't need to. If you have consistent case types or evidence types that you're working, simply save the processing profile and then just select that one every time. If I were to create this with hashing turned off and whatever else is here, I can save that user profile, giving it a name. We'll call it demo vid, okay? And hit save. Now it'll automatically select it here this time because we just created it and assumes that because we've modified it, that's the one that we want to do. But on the next time through, demo vid will be a selection. We can select it and move on just that quick. So be smart about the processing options that you choose, because the one thing we don't have in forensics is time. You've got a backlog, you've got plenty to do. Don't waste time processing artifacts that you're not going to look at, that's going to clutter your interface and create more stuff for you to dig through. Thanks for watching. Episode 5, and we're already doing a sequel. We take another look at optimizing our processing in FTK Feature Focus. Welcome back. This is episode 5 of Feature Focus. I am Justin Tolman. I'm the director of training over North America for Access Data, which is an Xtero company. It's a new name, but the same great software. And today we're taking a deeper look at optimizing our processing option. That was not originally scheduled today, but a topic came up through the support portal, and I think there's more that we can talk about, some concrete examples and some ways that we can talk about reducing the amount of time and getting to that evidence quicker. Let's get into it. All right, so from our support chat, this issue was brought up through there and a discussion involved. So what the user says is, I uploaded several Outlook PST files on Friday and the status still says processing. They uploaded multiple PST files. So each PST file is 10 gigabytes in size for a total of 100 gigabytes of data. Would this size cause it to hang? So first off, FTK isn't hanging in this case. It is still processing. There's a large amount of data and it's going to take a lot of time to chunk through it. And so let's talk a little bit about that. So the first question you're probably asking is, wait, isn't this FTK Feature Focus? And the question is yes, but the same concepts can apply. And so I think this will apply to FTK in the way that we process our evidence. And so specifically what we're going to look at is email today. So first off, what is our objective again? Our objective is to determine if there's any evidence, if we need to go through. So in this case, a recommendation may be, and remember, this is just a general recommendation, your policies, procedures, laws, yada, 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 will of course apply. So a recommendation may be to load the PST related to the primary individual of the investigation, if there is such. If they are all to one individual, then maybe start with the PST that is most recent or closest to the time of the event that you're investigating. This would be advised if you're going to run a lot of processing options on them, okay? Because 10 gigabytes alone, and I know we've got more, but 10 gigabytes is a lot of email. So if we do a math on the 100 gigabytes of data, and email sizes vary and are kind of all over the place, but if we picked a round number of say 200 kilobytes per email, that's going to round out to about 500,000 emails that we could have in there, give or take a couple thousand, right? Depending on attachments and all that. So that is a lot of text data that you're going to be processing that it's got to go through. So we want to try to optimize that if we can. Let's address this question head on first from the eDiscovery processing profile within FTK. That processing profile is shown here on the screen, and we can see what we would get if we loaded in 100 gigabytes of data and we just chose the default, the eDiscovery default, and push it through. So first off, we have the MD5 hash and flag duplicate files. And this is a common workflow when working with emails, is you want to reduce those duplicate emails and files, etc. Now, remember, MD5 hashing, you're going to be hashing all the files. So if we go with our 100 gigabytes, approximately 500,000 emails, that's a lot. and there are a lot of small files, so it's starting and stopping that process quite a bit. Hold up. So one thing I noticed when I was editing here is in the eDiscovery software default options, there's actually a small change in that the known file filter is also enabled for deduplicating actual files. So that's also another thing where it's got to process and run the KFF engine as well. That's going to increase time if you're on the eDiscovery side. If you were to enable that here, it would do the same thing, but by default on the FTK side, it's not enabled. All right, back to, and then we're going to flag duplicate files. So on top of that, we're comparing that hash. We also have various expansion options selected here in the expand compound files, PSTs, archives, various Office documents and PDFs, those types of things that you may need, things that are commonly attachments, those types of things. So that's fine. We're going to flag bad extensions. Okay. We're going to do the search text index. The search text index is incredibly useful, so I'm not saying you turn that off, but remember, you have all text data in email. It's primarily text data, so it's going to take some time to chug through that, and it's going to generate a large database. Create thumbnails for graphics. Now, this one is one that maybe you could tweak, but again, you're doing this by default. So if you just click default, you're going to get those thumbnails on any attachments or any other things that may be in that image that you're going to get. Now, in this case, it's just PSTs, so they'll all be attachments. Okay. And then we don't really have much else other than document content analysis. If there was a lot of emails discussing, say, something like purchasing, it's going to try to group those up into a little category that we could see in the overview tab. Really helpful, but it's going to add some time to your processing. And remember, you're dealing with 500,000 emails. And so every time it has to group, it has to look at all 500,000. Also, with eDiscovery processing profile in FTK, you're going to be deduplicating, okay? And an oversimplification of the deduplication process is that it takes various fields. So you can see those fields here, to, from, CC, subject, submit time, etc. And it's going to hash those, create a checksum for those. And then it's going to compare all of those fields across the data set to determine, hey, this email is already in there. I don't need to bring it in again. Now that's great when you're in the analysis phase, and that's what you're doing now. You're processing heavy up front. You're spending that time now so that you don't have to look at it later, and it's quick once you get in the analysis phase. But it is time, and remember, you're dealing with a data set of approximately 500,000 emails. Yeah, that's why it's going to take a long time, because you're doing a lot of things. Now, other things that could impact the time on, say, an email case is a frequent workflow for eDiscovery is to use optical character recognition for things like TIFFs and PDFs. Now, this is great because it'll make all those easily searchable, even though they're graphics, for the text that's within them. But if you do that as a pre-processing option, you will scan all attachments and OCR every relevant file. Now, you can reduce the types of files that are OCR'd by selecting specific file types, but still you're not targeting just the topics that you want, or just the people that you want, or the subject, or that sort of thing. You're still going to get everything. So if in those PSTs, only 10% of the emails are things you even care about, you're still OCRing 100% of the attachments. So be aware of that. That's going to add time that you didn't need to spend. So another reason you may need to or want to bring each item in individually is if you're not in total control of the infrastructure on which your evidence is processed. In this case, the user reported to us that their IT department needed to bring the server down for maintenance or some issue, and his case was still processing. What do we do here? This way, you are processing for less time per chunk. And if you needed to wait in between chunks, or tell them to wait at least just another day or a couple more hours for the 10 gigabyte PST to process, that's going to be a lot better for you as well. The nice thing about FTK is that you can add evidence at any point through the analysis and do additional analysis as well. We talked about that in the last episode, where remember, we want to determine if we have any evidence. Is there anything to support the hypothesis of our case? Is there evidence? Is there not? Etc. Okay. And so we want to get in as quickly as possible. And so we can go up to evidence and then add remove, and continue to add a PST as we go through, checking them as we go. This will reduce your upfront processing time and allow you to target things for additional processing. Okay, so if we need to come back in and OCR some documents, we know, okay, I only need to say here, Danielle Jason's, I only need to OCR the attachments associated with her emails, and I can check those, target them. So I'm OCRing maybe 200 emails instead of 500,000. Okay, so don't be afraid to do a little light processing on the front end, and then do additional processing later, because you're going to work those emails. It'll be the end of the day. You can fire off an OCR job. It'll be done by the time you come back in the morning and you work your OCR. You haven't lost any time on the computer. You come back, load the next 10 gig and go. Now, if you don't have anybody else using the machine, and like most of us, we have plenty to do, plenty of other cases of work, maybe you're going to go work other things, then you can just let it run and that's fine. But in the case of like this user here, where they had pressures from outside their department with the IT, and it was just a lot of data, and they may have over selected on processing options, at least up front, then you can cut that down by optimizing your processing options in the pre-processing and do additional analysis later. Thanks for watching. And if you want to take a deeper dive into the software, learn a bit more how to use it and optimize it and get the most out of your cases, of course, you can sign up for training at training.accessdata.com. Is it worth it? Are you worth it? Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.